All right, so if you're familiar with my videos, you know that I've got a lot of really expensive tools in my shop that help me do my projects in a really fast and efficient way. That being said, I also have a ton of really inexpensive tools, and since I'm pretty cheap, I'm constantly trying to find inexpensive stuff that I can buy that'll help me accomplish my goals, maybe at scale where I can buy 2 or 3 of them instead of just one, and also something that I can recommend to other people and help them get a little bit further in their journey as a woodworker, a metal worker, a machinist, or just an overall kind of maker and builder. So today I'm going to go through cheap tools that I actually use here in my shop. We're going to bounce around from the metal shop into the machine shop, into the wood shop, and go through a really long list of everything that I use that is probably cheaper than you think and works better than you would expect considering the price. So let's get right into it. All right, I'm going to start this off with a kind of a fan favorite. So this is the Pneumatic Beveling tool. So if you're a metal worker, even if you're a woodworker, this is a really unassuming tool that you can buy for, I think now it's between $50 and $70 on Amazon. And I'll put links to this tool and all the other tools down in the description. But this is a little air-powered tool that's going to help you bevel plate, whether it be steel or aluminum. Very, very cheap. Almost seems impossible that it could be as useful for considering its price, but a tool that I use all the time to clean up edges and is absolutely worth the money. Just be careful. Make sure that the end on the one that you buy matches the air fittings that you actually use, because they come with a couple different style ends, and you don't want to have to buy this thing for 50 bucks and then spend another 5 or 6 on a new end. So just try to get it right the first time. And then the carbide inserts that you'll have over here in the front, you can buy replacements for online. The other thing to watch out for, there's a set screw, a couple set screws around this collar. From the vibration of this tool, they fly out, so try to keep tabs on them. Maybe put a little bit of Loctite on there. But a great tool for very, very little money. All right, so while I've got the airline out, I'll show you another inexpensive accessory and tool that I use on all my airlines, which is this inline air blower. So basically it connects in between my air fitting and my chuck, and by pushing this button, you see how that little thing pops out? Gives me an air blower. I guess kind of hard to see on video. There you go. And you've always got a little air blaster on your hose. I like this one because it's inline. I have other ones that kind of stick out to the side, but this one's a little slimmer. In the metal shop where I'm using die grinders and DAs, I wanted something that was inline. Obviously, adds a little bulk to your air hose, but it's pretty useful and good to have. Just needs to kind of be lubricated because it does get kind of sticky like this one is. All right, sticking around in the metal shop, you've got these things. Now, these are flexible kind of pipe polishing grinders. Now, this is a standalone one with a cord. Very inexpensive, but it's got a cord on it. Now, a couple of months ago, maybe last year, I made a video showing how you could just buy the adapter piece and you could put it on a variable speed angle grinder. So that's what I've got right here. This is a Milwaukee variable speed 18-volt grinder. And by clamping this on and adding a little washer, you've got yourself a really nice kind of pipe polishing attachment. You can see the way it flexes around that pipe as I'm kind of pressing it down. It's flexing. So super, super useful. Amazing for cleaning up tube, cleaning up pipe. Also, if you're a woodworker and you're doing like railings or spindles and you want that really nice, soft grinding opportunity, this is going to do it. The dust collection doesn't exist, so protect your lungs, but are really cheap. I think this is like 60 bucks. Add-on that you can put on an angle grinder, and I use this all the time. This grinder only ever has this on it. I never take it off, and I never use the corded one anymore because this has a battery. So I want to qualify this next cheap tool, meaning that it's not necessarily cheap. Like I think this tool's between $200 and $300, but it's cheap in comparison to this one. So basically, these are both doing the same thing. This is a mitering metal cutting bandsaw, and this is a mitering metal cutting bandsaw. The one behind me, I think, is about $10,000. This one, though, being around $300, I used for probably 6 years in this shop exclusively. I didn't have another metal cutting bandsaw. It's a great little tool. People have criticized it because it's an off-brand, it's a Wen. I bought it on Amazon. I had to modify it a little bit because the blade was popping off the wheels. But this saw has made me probably $100,000 in the amount of work that I've done with it. It has paid for itself like 1,000 times over at this point. So if you're on the fence and you need a benchtop mitering bandsaw, again, being able to miter the head is really nice on this. The other thing that I think people leave behind when they're thinking about buying tools for their shop is consumables. The blade for this saw is about 20 bucks. The blade for that big saw is over $100. So if I have to cut something, maybe a harder piece of material or a piece of stainless that might ruin my blade, I'd much rather have a couple of these blades standing by than be cooking a 1-inch by probably 14-foot long blade for my big bandsaw. Also, Amazon sells these blades, so I can get them overnight. The big bandsaw, I got to wait a couple days because I have to have them made. So a cheap, kind of air quotes, cheap tool that I use all the time is this Wen chopping bandsaw. I refuse to get rid of it. So on the bench, I've got a bunch of small tools that I use all the time that I want to just kind of run through. Very inexpensive, and I use them for pretty much everything. Kind of the universal one that I think everybody knows about, but I think people kind of don't understand and don't credit how useful they are, is a good speed square and combination square combo. This is about 15 bucks. The reason I show this is because this is not a boutique item where you just buy one and you hold on to it for the rest of your life. Some people use that mentality, but I'm a quantity guy. I'd rather have 4 of these sets kicking around the shop so there's always one within reach, and also I can modify these as I need. So if you do any metalworking, you've probably clipped the corner off of one of your speed squares so you can get inside the rounded corner material. And these are just great to have. It's a really cheap set, and it's pretty high quality, always very accurate, and very good to have. Another really expensive thing is I always keep a little deburring tool. People get hung up on buying really expensive ones. There are really high quality ones that you can get, and I would recommend investing in one. But if you need to buy something and you want to save some money, this little plastic body one is great. And what I like right now, there aren't any tips in the back, but you can store more cutters in it, and it's a really nice little piece. Recently, I was working with somebody and they had an electric screwdriver, and at first I literally thought it was a toy, and I was like, what a little gimmick. But then I kind of played with it a little bit, and I found this one on Amazon. And what I really like about it is it's got a little electrical tester in it too. So if you're out on a job and you want to make sure that a wire is live or dead, you just push this little button, and it's a touchless tester. It's also got a little light on it as well. I designed and 3D printed a little bit holder that goes on the side because I was obviously wanted to make sure it always had bits. But it's honestly excellent. I use it all the time when I'm doing electrical work, or if I'm doing something sensitive, like putting together a battery box or a project box, and I don't want to risk breaking it, so I can just kind of carry this around instead of a traditional screwdriver and get a lot of use out of it. It's about 12 bucks. It's made by the Skill company, and it charges with a USB charger, so no batteries to worry about, but a pretty useful little tool. I use it all the time. Now, if I want to raise some controversy and upset people, I like to talk about my 1, 2, 3 blocks. So 1, 2, 3 blocks are such a useful tool. You need them in your shop. If you don't have them, you're really cutting yourself short. So 1, 2, 3 blocks are exactly 1 inch in this direction, 3 inches in this direction, and 2 inches in that direction. They are precision ground. They are always perfect within a tolerance of, it's usually 5 thousandths, which if you're doing anything and you're watching my videos, 5 thousandths is probably good enough. But I literally keep extra brand new boxes of these in my shop at all times in case I need to modify them or use them. I space up welding projects with these. I use them as blocks on the grinder. I use them for everything, and they are considered disposable to me. It's about 18 bucks for a pair, so you don't have to treat them like an heirloom tool. Additionally, you see these big boys here. These are 2, 4, 6 blocks. So similarly to the 1, 2, 3 blocks, these are 2 inches in this direction, 4 inches in this direction, and 6 inches vertically. These are a little bit more expensive, but the inexpensive kind of import ones are much cheaper than buying a high quality, Starrett version, and they're going to accomplish essentially the same thing. I don't have 10 sets of these. I think I maybe have 2 or 3, but all really useful. If I need exactly 7 inches vertically and I stack these up, I know without question this is 7 inches tall. Talking about heights, another really cheap tool that I use all the time that I think people under kind of emphasize and under realize how useful they can be is an inexpensive height gauge. So this is great, even if I think the batteries are probably dead on this one. Yeah, they are. Notice how I keep a battery taped to it for that exact reason. But even if you need to just kind of mark and find the center of something or mark the height of something, you can set it. You can kind of use this tip as a scribe. It's probably not meant to be used in that way, but that's why they're your tools. You can use them however you want. I really like an inexpensive height gauge in my metal shop. They're amazing in a wood shop if you make furniture. Obviously, they'll scribe really well. This one has a magnetic base, so on a metal table, it's nice. But I keep tape on the bottom of it so that if it does get marked up, I can peel the tape off and use this on a sensitive surface without it getting messed up. And like I said, tape a battery to your tools like this, because when this battery is dead in the middle of a project, you're not going to want to have to go digging for a button cell battery somewhere. An unsung hero of any shop is a good set of transfer punches. So if you've never seen these before, they're basically a punch shaft with a little point in the center of them. And what they're good for, we'll use a 1, 2, 3 block as an example. Let's say I want to punch a hole that is going to be exactly where one of the holes in this 1, 2, 3 block is. So I could use the transfer punch. I could basically take my 1, 2, 3 block, put it on my material, drop my transfer punch in the hole, and instead of trying to take like a Sharpie marker and kind of stick it in through the hole here and try to make a mark and try to hope that it's centered, when you get the appropriate size transfer punch and you drop it through one of these holes, that point on the end of it is going to be exactly in the center. So you're able to use these to transfer holes. These are great in the wood shop, in the metal shop. Keep a set in your truck if you do site work. They're very inexpensive. I have a bunch of different sets in different sizes. You can get them in metric, standard, letter, and number drill bits as well. But if you can't find the right size transfer punch, you can also get these. These are self-adjusting. These are expanding transfer punches. These are really cool. Basically, they just use like a little wedge system. So they expand as you tighten this screw on the back, and then this will fit tightly in whatever hole, and then the actual punch part is floating in there, so you can get a good transfer through it. Now, what you can tell pretty immediately from this is that this is a tapered kind of shape now, so it's not really going to work great for like longer or deeper holes. It's really only going to work well for sort of plate where you've got kind of a smaller reference surface, but these are really useful. They're super inexpensive, and you can get a 3-pack for very little money, get a couple different sizes. This is more like an emergency set that you'd bring on site with you if you didn't have the right size transfer punch. All right, speaking of emergencies, have you ever seen one of these? This is a thread file. So what you've got here is you've got a file with different patterns cut into it, and the patterns correspond with different thread counts. So this is 11, this is 12, and that's going to be tooth per inch, so 20 TPI, 24. So if you're wondering kind of how that refers, a quarter 20 screw has 20 threads per inch. Now, if you've got a bolt or a screw or a stud that has damaged threads, you would take out one of these files and you could actually file the threads and it would repair those threads. Now, these can be a little tricky to use, but they are absolutely essential if you have to do any repair work to keep with you, especially if you go out and work in the field, do anything off-site, and you don't necessarily have a tap and die, or maybe you can't get a tap and die onto it. You can use one of these to clean up threads. Super inexpensive and absolutely something that you got to have. All right, speaking of threads, everybody needs one of these. People think these are a gimmick, like, you know, this is like a hardware store tool, but you need one. This is a thread checker. This is the US made one, US patented. What I like about this one versus one of the ones that's kind of shaped like a board is if I absolutely had to, I could cut this and I could basically pull one of these off and bring it to something. I also like that just generally I can get one of these pretty well isolated. So if I have to get down like into a motor or onto a machine, I can isolate one of these versus if I had that big board, I'd have to actually bring the nut or bolt over to the board, whereas this one is just so much easier and so much more nimble. I use this thing probably every single week. It's got metric and standard threads on it, and I haven't found a thread that this doesn't fit, so it's got a really nice assortment on there, and it's absolutely something that you need to have in your shop. Super cheap, and you need one. All right, so while we're talking about threads, if you've ever tapped anything, you've probably broken a tap or broken a bolt. So this is a set of left-hand drills, as I wrote on the case. And I think what people kind of don't realize about these is a lot of times if you have a broken bolt or a stud, the left-handed drill will almost always get that broken stud out because this drill will likely grab the material, especially if it's kind of shattered. But if it doesn't, then you've got these extractors as well. I got this set specifically because sometimes it's hard to identify really what size drill bit you should use with these extractors. This is a super cheap set. It just comes in this little case. And again, typically if I'm going to break a bolt, it's going to be out in the field. It's not going to be here in my shop in a controlled environment. And I want to be able to, instead of kind of run to the toolbox, grab an extractor, grab a drill bit, I want to be able to just grab a set that has everything in it. Left-handed drill bits are really, really great to have. Just make sure you identify them though, because at first glance, if you don't know what you're looking at, this just looks like any other drill bit. And if you run it in reverse with pressure on it, you'll probably mess up the cutting edge. So a nice little set of left-handed drill bits, good to have. Kind of stupid case the way it opens, but inexpensive tool, and it's something that you should just add to your toolbox. All right, talking about an inexpensive add to the toolbox that I really love. If you do anything with zip screws or anything with little kind of nut setters, so if you've ever done zip screws, self-tapping screws, you know that the magnet on the little socket always gets clogged with metal shavings because you're literally drilling a hole. This little set from DeWalt, it's got 5 different size nut drivers. And what's cool about it is you slide them onto a little arbor so that when you're using this, if the magnet gets clogged up with shavings, you just pop it off and you can clean the magnet. This is a really inexpensive set. I think it's about 10 bucks. It's got 5 sizes in it. It's standard, not metric, but probably the 5 most common sizes that I ever come across, all the way up to 1/2 inch, which is kind of nice to have too. The only downside is these sockets are very, very shallow, so you're not going to really be able to drive any actual hardware with these, but you will be able to put in self-tappers, and these things are really, really useful to have. I keep buying sets because I inevitably lose one of these, but they're so inexpensive. Again, kind of a throwaway kit. You can just have one in the truck, one in the bag, one in the shop, and use them when you need them. All right, here's another nice to have, and when I say cheap on a tool like this, it's really in relationship to kind of what it can do for you. Now, this is a laser distance measurer. This one is a little more expensive. I think this one's about 100 bucks. Maybe a little more, but they've gotten to be so inexpensive. I think Home Depot has one on sale right now for $39. When these first came out, I couldn't trust them. I just, something about it, I never felt like I got a good reading. I just didn't feel right. And then I started using them more and more in situations where I had to kind of measure across 2 distances that I couldn't really get a tape measure on. And you know, once you get the hang of using something like this and you work it into your workflow and you carry it with you, these things are incredible. I mean, they take a lot of the human error out of measuring because when you have a typical tape measure, right, there's so much human error baked into using a tape measure, right? You've got the hook on the end that kind of wiggles. If you try to measure inside a corner, you've got that bend. You know, this eliminates all that. And if you spend a little more money and get a better quality one, like this one, for instance, I can choose if I wanted to measure off the back of the tool, if I want to measure it off the front of the tool. There's an app that goes with this. I think this one's a little excessive, to be completely honest, and I really never use any of those special features. But it's a really great tool. It's great for checking and doing takeoffs if you're going to kind of show up to a job and you need to measure if you're a woodworker or even a metal worker, whatever it may be. Definitely consider getting a laser distance measure. I will say, though, buy a high-quality one, right? This is by Bosch. They've been making these for a long time. I don't know that I would skimp and buy an off-brand one because the risk of these dimensions being wrong if you have an issue is probably pretty high. So I just spend a little bit more money, but you can still spend 30, 40 bucks on a name brand Bosch. Get one from somebody that's been in the business a long time, and these guys definitely have. This is not sponsored. So this is a slick little tool my buddy Derek from Malden turned me on to. This is a plunger can, so you can see basically the way that that liquid popped out of the top. You would take a rag and put it on there, and as you press down, it's going to get the rag wet with whatever liquid's in there. Now, I keep acetone in mine. It's a really useful way to kind of store solvents. There's a lot of ways to pour out acetone, but I found this to be the easiest and best. This is the smaller version of this can. The only problem I've had with this is if I don't use it for a long time, the acetone will tend to evaporate. But typically when I'm using this, if I'm cleaning aluminum, if I'm doing a bunch of aluminum welding or steel welding, the acetone stays good for a while, and I can really easily get that acetone out of there, and I can clean off my parts. So obviously it's a flammable, so be careful with it, but these plunger cans can be really, really useful to have around the shop. And they're pretty inexpensive. All right, so moving off the bench, I'll kind of talk a little bit about what I carry every day, and it's all inexpensive tools, but they've really helped me just be more productive. One of the things I've talked about in past videos is this little glazer's pouch. So I have this on me all the time. If you've watched my videos, you've seen it. It's a 3-spot, like basically pen holder that goes on your belt and has a spot for a tape measure. So I've been a project manager now in my professional career for about 8 years, and a carpenter before that for basically my entire life. I've been carrying a tape measure for 20 years. I have wrecked so many pairs of jeans having a tape measure on my pocket. Just shredded the threads, and then it wrecks the pocket, then the jeans are garbage. So I started carrying something off of my pocket on my belt probably about 8 years ago, and I've never looked back from it. You know, it's a great place to keep pens. I'm actually working on designing my own that I think is a little more functional, but this is just called a glazer's pouch. There's a bunch of different options you can find online, and I carry mine every day. I also carry a Leatherman. This is a really expensive one, so I don't want to go into too much detail, but get a multi-tool of some kind. Carry one, use it. You'll use it a lot. This is a Charge titanium. This is about 200 bucks, but I really like this tool. I like it because it's titanium. It's very light. And one of the big things that I always carry is a flashlight. Like literally always carry it. My wife makes fun of me. I bring it on vacation with us, and I always carry an Olight. So this is an Olight Baton 4. I like this one a lot because it has a battery gauge on it, so I can tell how charged it is when I'm traveling, and it comes with a little case. I actually have another Olight in the case. And when when you want to charge it, you drop it in the case, you close it. I have a couple of different Olight flashlights. This is a larger one that has a UV light on it, probably can't see, and a laser that you can use to kind of point stuff out. I bring this on site with me, especially when I work on commercial buildings and I need to kind of point to something. You kind of look like a the first time you show up with the laser pointer, but I'm telling you, it's really useful if you're trying to show a large group of people something of concern, and instead of everybody looking up and pointing, you can pop the laser on. It's really, really useful. So if you're going to buy a nice LED flashlight, get something rechargeable, and you can check out these Olights. I really, really do like these, and that's why I have a couple of them. So again, thinking about what I'm carrying on me, you're going to notice that I always have a pair of safety glasses on or around me. Sometimes I have like 2 or 3 pairs. Safety glasses are the kind of thing that you just need to buy in bulk. I don't believe that buying one expensive pair of safety glasses is good for anybody, because if you're like me, I don't put them down in the same place. I constantly am like running in and out of the shop. I take them off. Most of these wind up in my car. So for me, if it's not within arm's reach, I'm not going to use it. And it's really just kind of poor practice for somebody like me, especially. Like I've been doing this a very long time, and I still give myself the safety squint. Which a lot of people say as they get older, they do that more, but I think it's kind of the opposite. As you get older, you should be getting smarter. So the smart thing to do, in my opinion, is to just buy like a 30-pack of safety glasses and make it so that there is no opportunity to ever work in your shop without them. Hearing protection is another thing. I actually realized I just have my headphones in right now. I wear kind of hearing protection earplugs all the time so that I can always protect my hearing. But other than that, you need to protect your eyes. You got 2, they're hard to replace, and getting stuff drilled out of them really, really sucks. So I literally keep a drawer in my shop full of brand new safety glasses, and anytime someone's in my shop, I make sure I give them a brand new pair in the package. Look, I literally buy these 30 at a time. They cost about $1.50 each, and if you're gonna buy these, get a set that's rated, ANSI rated, so you're not buying something that if it does get hit with a projectile, it's just gonna shatter. Get something from a real brand and buy something that's going to help protect your eyes and wear them. All right, while we're talking about safety, we got to talk about first aid kits. So this is a Pneumatic kit. This is a little more serious of a first aid kit than your standard kind of like off the shelf Amazon special. This came from actually my brother's company called Mountain Ready. They're based out of North Carolina, Mountain Ready Supply. So he knows what I do in the shop, and he wanted to set me up with a really good first aid kit. Now this thing is going to have everything that you need in it for a real kind of trauma emergency. Now I think one of the things that people underestimate working in their shop is how quickly an accident can turn into like a true trauma situation versus like a cut or a bump or a bruise. And if you follow me for long enough, you know that I've had, severe second-degree burn in my shop. I've cut myself a million times. But I've also heard really horrible stories of guys, having something fly off the buffer or kick back off the table saw and wind up in a situation where you need a tourniquet or you need some quick clot. Getting yourself a high-quality first aid kit is so important. Even just thinking about the cost, right? This video is about cheap tools. Nothing is going to come even close to that emergency visit, even if you had to buy a $500 first aid kit, which this isn't. So check out this one in particular. But if you don't want to buy this one, it doesn't matter. Buy something. And if you have a shop like mine where you have multiple rooms, every room needs a first aid kit, at least one. Because if you're bleeding out and the first aid kit is 3 rooms away, that's not going to help you. Every single room in my shop has a tourniquet right next to the fire extinguisher. So at least I know, okay, emergency, go to the fire extinguisher. There's fire extinguishers on all the walls. That's another kind of thing I wasn't really thinking to mention. But fire extinguishers, smoke detectors, all that stuff. This is supposed to be fun. You're not supposed to die doing this. So that's my PSA. Get yourself a good first aid kit. And if you want to check this one out, you can get it from Mountain Ready. I'll put a link down below in the description of the video. All right, the last EDC thing I want to talk about is this sticker. Talk about a cheap tool that I use every single day. I actually make these, full disclosure. These are fraction to decimal conversion chart stickers. Now this one is just fraction to decimals. The one I keep on the back of my phone is fraction to decimals to millimeters. I make these, I sell them in a bunch of sizes. They are an incredibly durable sticker. You will use this if you do any drafting, if you ever need to just convert fractions. What I really like about it is just how quickly I can reference back and make sure that I'm doing the right thing. The other location where I use this every single day is on my laptop right next to the trackpad so that I can draft and check my fraction to decimal to metric conversion. They're a couple bucks. I sell them basically as cheap as I can at essentially cost. And if you want some, you can pick them up on my website. There'll be a link down in the description to get those as well. All right, so before we head over into the wood shop, here's another cheap tool that I actually use. These inexpensive locking kind of vice grip clamps. I buy these in 5-packs. I also have some really high-end ones, some really expensive sort of self-locking ones. These are ones from Armor Tool. These are great too. These are about $40 to $50 each, and I think these are like less than $10 each. So both of them are awesome to have, but if you need quantity, which sometimes if you've ever done any fixturing or jigging, you need a lot of these things. So I don't really see a reason to kind of bellyache myself and buy only these ones if I can live with these for a project and get through it. So I'll put a link to some selections. You can get a 5 or a 10-pack of these for pretty cheap. And they've been really good to have. I have so many I need to build another clamp rack, but they are very useful. And if you do any metalworking, if you do any woodworking or making of anything, you'll use these things. Another quick one in the metal shop is these inexpensive tungsten sharpening tools. So this one is mounted on a Milwaukee 12-volt grinder. So I bought this and put it on the grinder, but now you can actually buy a self-contained unit for less than $100. And basically what this is going to allow you to do is sharpen your tungsten through one of these holes if you are a TIG welder. This is so much faster than going over to the grinder and using a stone. It's a dedicated tool, and I'm probably going to replace this with one of the less expensive ones that's a dedicated single unit so I can reclaim this Milwaukee Dremel. But super useful to have. It's great if you do site work. And all this is a little aluminum kind of machined or cast thing with a diamond wheel. But really inexpensive and way better than some of the other options out there that it can be a couple $100 and a lot bigger and have a cord. So I actually made a whole video about adding a headlamp to your welding hood, and it was before these sort of headband headlamps had come out, so you can see actually the Velcro from that. These things are way better. So some of my welding hoods actually have a light built in. There's a new Lincoln Viking that has that, but I keep that hood in my truck for when I'm doing work on site, and I keep this one in the shop. So this is just a super bright headband headlamp. It's kind of like a neoprene or a silicone or something. And the way you can attach this to your welding hood, you're not even really attaching it, but if you go around the screws and up over the top, you can put this on your welding hood, or if you have a grinding hood, like a clear hood, you can do the exact same thing. And by setting one of these up on your welding hood, you can really see a lot better if you're welding in a dark area, if you're welding under a table. obviously the tinted shade that is on a welding hood before a weld begins is already darkened. But with this on there, you might even be able to see it through the camera. You can just see so much better having a light on the front of your hood. So these are like 10 bucks, I think, for a 2-pack generally. And they have a cool feature usually. I think this one has it, where you can set it up so that you wave your hand and it turns the light on and off. So if you don't want to have to be pushing the button, once you put it on that wireless mode, you can just wave your hand by it and it'll turn the light on. Wave your hand by it and it'll turn the light off. A lot of people don't realize that these have that feature. But anyway, really useful. I stopped using the little Velcro headlamp and I started using these. They're rechargeable with a little USB and they're great. If you work with any type of gases, you know that once you open this valve, it's pretty easy to accidentally leave it open. So a cheap tool that, again, kind of seemed like a gimmick when I first saw it is these valve view caps. So basically these go on top of your gas bottle. They have them in 2 different styles. This is like the 5-point, and then they have, I think it's the 8 or 12-point, whatever it is. And once you open this, you see these little red marks. So basically I always know if my gas is open as I'm walking through the shop at night. This is actually reflective too, so you can really tell, oh, I left the gas on, go over and turn that valve off, and it does not go back to all yellow until the valve is completely off. They're a couple bucks. I usually buy them for all my bottles. I like to keep a bunch of them in stock just in case the bottle I get from the supplier has a different top. Work pretty good. All right. So if you've watched my videos, you see me using these tables all the time. Now, cheap is kind of relative with these. They used to be like 75 bucks. Now I think they're over 100. They might be on sale for Black Friday this year, around 80 bucks. I think I have 6 of these. I cannot tell you how often I use these. The holes in the middle are great for clamping stuff. They're very sturdy. What I like about the plastic top is it doesn't mark anything up. And when I go to jobs, honestly, we usually set up a couple of these and use these instead of using sawhorses. So I think in the shop right now I have 4 of them. When I built the big canopy bed, I actually built the whole frame on 4 of these, like set them up in a big kind of area. Really useful tool. They obviously deploy really quickly and then they fold up kind of just as fast. And what I like about them is they're pretty low profile when you're not using them. And then when you need them, they open right up. So these are from DeWalt. There's another company called Tough Built that makes one. I bought it. It's much heavier. It doesn't feel much better, and I think it's about the same price. So I like these DeWalt ones the best. I'll probably buy a couple of more just to keep them in the truck. Super useful tool. All right, so the next cheap tool that I actually use is this Ryobi stuff. Now, I've actually had comments on my videos of people saying, I see you using Ryobi tools. I'm not going to watch your videos anymore because you clearly don't know what you're doing if these are the tools you're using. Let me tell you, if you're the kind of person that judges somebody else's work based on the brand of tools they use, just get lost. I have used every brand of tools, from the most expensive green tools to the cheapest green tools. And let me tell you, if you use them properly, they all have their place. So 2 of the things I love from Ryobi are these battery-operated fans. These are hybrid fans, so you can run off their 18-volt batteries, or you can plug into the back of them with an extension cord. These fans with a 4 amp-hour battery will run for 8 hours. And let me tell you, if you're trying to dry paint or keep smoke out of your face, keep any kind of air moving on a really hot day, keep hot air getting to you on a cold day, these things are incredible. We use them in my camper RV. We use them in my house. I use them for my daughter. They're like 60 bucks. You buy a cheap set of batteries and you'll use them. This is their newer one, which is like a whisper quiet one. It's much quieter and has a little more velocity. I really like both of these. Ryobi makes a bunch of great tools. This is not sponsored by them. I've just bought their stuff. Their batteries are cheap. The tools are good, and they make a bunch of kind of weird stuff like a pool vacuum and a stick vacuum and all these other random specialized tools that I've never seen anyone else make. And once you're into this platform, you can buy their tools. One of the things I use all the time in a very kind of professional setting is their 1/4-inch die grinder. Now, people have left me negative comments seeing me use this, but this to me is better than the Milwaukee 12 volt. First of all, it's using an 18 volt battery, which is going to just have a lot more runtime to it. It does have 4 speed settings, which are labeled, unlike the Milwaukee, 10,000, 15,000, 20,000, and 22,000 RPM. And the thing I like most about it is when you go to actually change the bit, there is an arbor lock on it. So you only need one wrench to change the tool on this versus on the Milwaukee where you have to have those 2 stupid wrenches and kind of do like the knuckle smasher to get it. So don't write off the Ryobi tools. Listen, are they the highest quality thing? No. Are they inexpensive for a reason? Yes. But if you need a die grinder and you want something that's going to run all day, buy this one. It's cheaper, better, easier to use than the Milwaukee, and it's going to get you there. Yeah, it's a little bit bigger. I'm not going to get into tight spaces, but for me, their tools have been excellent. So if that bothers you, just stop watching my videos because I like using their tools. You're going to see them in the background, and they all have their place. A true professional can use any type of tools from any brand, any vintage, and get their job done efficiently. All right, so we all use a lot of spray paint, I'm sure, and shaking it for the actual 2 minutes that you're supposed to if you read the can, especially as we get into the colder months, is a real pain. So this thing, the spray paint shaker, I've been using this for a couple of years. You've probably seen it if you watch my other videos. It goes into a Sawzall, and it uses like basically a snowboard binding to hold your spray paint can and allows you to shake your spray paint. This is a one-handed Sawzall that's kind of broken. The trigger doesn't really work well, so I've kind of dedicated it for this purpose. But you basically just put your can in there, shake your spray paint. I use this all the time. It lives on this Sawzall, and then I just kind of bounce between batteries. One of these days, I'm going to make some sort of a rig where I can kind of keep this on a shelf and push a button with a timer so I don't have to hold it. But it is nice to be able to bring this with me if I have to do any kind of, this is rusty metal primer, priming on site, especially on a cold day. It's nice to get that paint really nice and shaken up, get the balls in there rolling around so that you know that that stuff's nice and mixed. And the spray paint shaker, it is made by a small business. A guy invented it, produces it, and I really like to support his company, so I'll put some links down below. I know he just came out with a new version which has a better kind of clamp system on it, and I have one in my truck, but the old one's working just fine, so I haven't even started using it yet. All right, now on the topic of spray painting, buy yourself one of these things. I know it seems like a gimmick to put like a trigger on your spray can, but let me tell you, if you do any extensive amount of spray painting and you got to kind of use your index finger to paint, a lot of people will switch to their thumb. It just sucks to do. My hands always cramp up. Just get yourself one of these little trigger things. I think they're $5 or $6. You clip it on your spray paint. They're so easy to use, and it's just so much more comfortable to pull the trigger from this. You can get a much better and more controlled spray pattern out of it, and you're going to get less hand fatigue. So if you've ever seen one of these in the paint store and thought, I'm never going to spend my money on that, just buy one, try not to lose it, or do what I do and buy probably have 10 of these. I just can never find them, and it's worth it. All right, so the next item is kind of weird. Check it out. All right, so I work outside a lot, and I track a lot of mud into my house, and I'm really sick of taking off my boots. I really love these Carolina boots, but they're 8 inches high, and I just don't feel like taking them on and off every time I go home. So I've been looking for a good solution for kind of permanent booties that are actually going to keep dirt off my floor. And I found these things on Amazon. These are by a company called Hex Armor. And the reason I got these is because it's hands-free to put them on and take them off. So they have this little kind of spot in the back to stomp your foot. So basically, you just step into them, you stomp your heel down, and you've basically got shoes on top of your shoes. They're sealed, so any of the dirt that's inside my boot is going to stay in there. And then I can walk in the house with my hands full. I can stomp into these. I can walk around, do what I got to do. And then when I go to leave, I just step on the back and step my way out of them. And just for evidence that they work, these were brand new when I put my boots in them. And you can see already how much dirt is just on the bottom of my shoes. So if you don't like to track dirt into your house or a customer's house, I think these are a really good option. They're a little expensive, but if you think about how much booties would cost and how much kind of your time is worth to kind of take and put on and take off your shoes, I think they're worth it. They're about 50 bucks. And make sure you measure the size of your shoe before you buy them. I wear a size 10 boot, and the ones I bought are for size 11.5 to 12. So if you have really big feet, these might not actually work for you because they might size out. But anyway, give them a try. All right, so lately I've been rewiring a trailer, and to do that, I've been using a lot of heat shrink butt connectors, and for a while I was using this thing. This is the cordless Milwaukee heat gun. This thing is terrible. It does not work very well at all, and if you use those connectors that have the solder built in, this won't melt the solder. So this is just basically a glorified hair dryer. So I needed something that was going to work a lot more efficiently, and I looked into a butane-fired kind of soldering and heat shrink tool, and I found this kit. This is an Eroda soldering kit. It's about 60 bucks. It's got a bunch of different soldering tips on it. You fill the back with liquid butane, and the thing that's cool about it is once you get it turned on, there you go. You can see in there is getting hot. Let's see if I can zoom in. Getting hot almost instantly. And then with this thing set up, I can easily and very quickly do my heat shrink connectors. And when you're done, you just shut it off. If you're using it kind of out in the field, there is a little case that goes over it that keeps it from being accidentally turned on. But the case that it comes with is nice. And it's got a little kind of heat protected area here so you can put it back. It's got a little kickstand. This is my first experience with something like this, and I've really, really liked it. I used it for basically an entire day. The other day I did probably 50 connections with it, and it worked flawlessly. The only thing that's a little tricky is sometimes you have to click it on twice, but for 60 bucks, this tool is $100 without a battery, and it sucks. This is $60, and then you buy yourself a thing of butane, and you fill the back. You could solder with it, you could heat shrink with it, and I think it's just a great little tool. I'm really happy that I bought it, and I'm probably going to buy a second one to keep in my electrical kit. All right, so both of these tools kind of catch a lot of flack. Now, this is a panel carry. This is a plastic tool for carrying drywall, plywood, whatever. And this is what I always call a Gorilla Grip. I think Gorilla Grip was the original patenter of these, and they were pretty expensive. Now there's like 100 Chinese knockoffs. So both of these are for carrying sheet goods. So I'll show you real quick. This is I think about 10 bucks. You can get these at Home Depot. And basically you just pick up the material. You got to get that underneath it. And then you can carry your panel from the bottom, right? Much easier and better if you're carrying something sensitive. Keeps it off the ground, but you still got to get under the material. I really, really like these things for carrying panels. So it uses kind of like a swiveling kind of pivot lock design. Basically slip it over the top of your material, and then you can carry your material like this. Now for me, this is a way more comfortable position for carrying material than trying to get underneath it. And this is 3/4 inch plywood. It's pretty heavy, probably weighs about 40 pounds. And I could walk around all day with this. The other thing that I like about this type of panel carrier is I can carry sheet metal with this because it'll pinch and clamp really any thickness, and then I can carry my sheet metal from the top. So I use this all the time when I'm carrying sheet metal around the shop. You got to be a little careful because if the sheet metal is dusty, it can slip out. And I'd be lying if I said I hadn't punched myself in the face by having sheet metal on my shoulder and it slipping off and hitting me in the nose. Thought I broke my nose that time. But it is a really useful tool, and now since you can get much cheaper versions on Amazon, I would pick one up if you have to move a lot of drywall, a lot of plywood. Typically, I'll carry 2 1/2-inch pieces of drywall with this. It'll grab 1 inch. So I can grab 2 taped together pieces and carry them off to the truck. Nice 3/4 inch plywood, MDF, whatever it is. And this will just keep you from having to bend down, carry stuff up on your shoulder. All right, so this tool caused a lot of controversy on my Instagram. So this is essentially a knockoff version of this right here. This is a Mirka Diros. This is about a $600 sander. And this is a no-name Chinese brand clone. It's obviously a little different in size. This one's definitely a lot more ergonomic. But this sander from Mirka is having some balance issues that I can't seem to resolve. So I thought I'd give one of these a try, and also to have a sander that I could bring on site that was a lot less expensive. This was under $200, and I gotta be honest, I like this one way more than the Mirka. And I don't know if it's because my Mirka is kind of worn out, but this thing has been excellent. The dust collection is great. The pad is good. The thing that's a little weird is they must have messed up the mold when they did this. So you have to have this sort of extension hose that's attached to the sander. And also my little 90-degree sander accessory, which clips onto the Mirka so I can sand around corners. This doesn't work with the knockoff one. If you're interested in this, I'll put a link to where I got this in the description. It's made by a guy in the maker community, and it's a really nice little tool. But anyway, if you need a 6-inch sander, which if you do any woodworking, you should definitely look into a 6-inch versus a 5-inch for its efficiency. I would maybe give one of these a try. I've been using it for the last maybe 4 months. I stopped using the Mirka and I started using this, and it has not skipped a beat. It's been excellent. And while it is cheaper, and while people were upset that I was kind of like supporting the knockoff economy, I just can't afford another $600 sander. Maybe you can, but I can't. This thing's doing just fine, so give it a try. While we're over here on my woodworking bench, I'll just show these things. These are painter's triangles. This might seem like a total no-brainer that everybody has, but if you don't already have these are excellent to have. You obviously can accumulate a lot of them, but these are just to keep work up off the bench when you're working on finishing. They do leave little dents in the material if you press on them, but the way that I use them is basically if I'm painting, I paint both sides and can lay them down on this, try to be very gentle. What's nice is they nest, they stack, you can bring them on site, they clip together, and you really can't have too many of them because the more you have, the more you're spreading out that surface weight, so you're less likely to have any blemishes or damage. And yeah, they're really useful, so pick some up, especially when they're on sale. You can get a good deal on them. So another item I keep and use in my wood shop are these drill stops. So they're like basically a little collet that goes over your drill bit, and they adjust up to, I want to say, a 1/2-inch drill. So if I pop this is a 3/8. Basically just loosen this, slide the drill bit in there. Got to make sure it's loose enough to actually get the drill bit on it. And then you can tighten up this drill collar, and it's going to just pinch around the drill bit, and it's going to maximize the depth in which you can use that drill bit. My buddy Derek from Malden turned me on to these. They're super inexpensive and very light. I had bought a set and accidentally vacuumed one of them up in my dust collector, so that's gone forever. But the small one is great for the smaller drill bits, and obviously this one will go up to 1/2-inch. I use this in the woodworking shop a lot because I don't necessarily want to drill through material if I'm doing any sort of hidden joinery, and they're just really useful to have. I should probably get a set for the metal shop because I'd use them there too, and they're just aluminum pieces, little collet inside, and worth the money. I'm going to show this tool simply because I've really enjoyed using it. I'm currently renovating my house, and when I first kind of saw these, I thought, like, this is ridiculous. What do I need this for? I'll use a flat bar like I've been using my entire life as a carpenter. But honestly, I switched to this, and I'm not busting my drywall anymore. So basically what this is a trim puller. So you put this up against your wall, and then it pivots out, and essentially what you're doing is you're maximizing the surface area that you are pressing against the drywall surface as you're pulling off a trim. So there's a little spring-loaded pivot point in here, and this is a couple bucks. It's not very expensive, and this is a brand new one because I actually want to have 2 of them on my house renovation so that me and the guy that's helping me both can use one, so neither of us are damaging the drywall. Previously, I was using this, and my buddy was using a flat bar, and he was popping holes in the drywall left and right. So if you're going to pop trim off and you want to be delicate, you don't want to do any damage, something like this is going to be really useful. Seemed like a gimmick, but it's actually great. So I've got a couple of angle finders, some of which literally look like toys, but I've actually been using all of these in different applications for the last couple of years. They all serve their purpose, and they're all really useful. This first one is from Milescraft. Now, this one is a little bit more on the gimmicky side. Basically, what you've got here is a gear in the middle, and the idea here is you put it in a corner, and it essentially tells you exactly what that corner needs to be cut at precisely, and then you can lock it in place, and you're really meant to put this over on your saw and set your saw blade up to it. If you use it properly, it's actually a really useful tool. A lot of times I feel like I'm kind of running and gunning, so I wind up not necessarily using it so correctly. But when you get set up, if you're doing trim with something like this, it can be really useful. I also like this plastic Starrett angle finder. This is also something that cuts the splits the angle in half for you. So if you're trying to do trim, crown molding, or base molding, you can use something like this. They make a much nicer metal one, but this one is a little more disposable. It's plastic, and it's a little easier to fit into tight places than the nice metal one. And then you've got this style. This one's missing the screw, but here you've got a compound angle finder. So you can find angles in a bunch of different ways on these. I like these because I can very easily kind of set the angle of a tool rest on any of my tools, and it goes down to a really extreme angle, which you can't really get with some of these other tools and get into a tight space. So these all serve their purpose. They're all really, really inexpensive, but you know, I do use these a lot, even though they are plastic and they're not really going to give me like a super precise result. You can still get great results out of tools like this if you just know kind of how to use them. This one kind of rolls over on itself and can do inside angles too. So if you've ever seen one of these in the store and thought, nah, that looks like a piece of garbage, I don't want to buy it, I don't know, give it a try. I use mine all the time. All right, so we talked a little bit about trim, and here's a tool that, again, I thought was a gimmick. I never bought when I was a trim carpenter, and now when I'm doing trim work, I'm so glad that I've kind of found out about these. These are these kind of little pin vise clamps. So basically what you've got here is you've got a tool. I think these are called Collins clamps, if I remember correctly. So you've got a tool here, and you got to get the tool in the right part of the clamp. But basically what you've got is spring-loaded pin here. And what this is going to do is it's going to give you really precise pressure on the corner of something. Now, obviously, if you're working on a finished piece, it is going to mark that finished piece. But if you're working in like a residential environment and you're going to have a painter come back and finish when you're done, a lot of times the little pinholes from these will actually get filled by paint, or you can very quickly kind of fill them in. So there's no glue in this joint, but you can see by pinching this, it's got a really nice joint on there, really nice closed corner. That would be pretty hard to clamp otherwise. So this is great for like doing casing and moldings. It's great for doing base. It's another thing where you kind of can never have too many of these, obviously. The other thing is some good fast-acting thick super glue. So this is the new Total Boat Total Bond. This is a thick glue with an accelerator. So I like to couple these two together basically by giving myself an instant joint that I don't have to worry about. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll use my super glue and I'll put a little bit of wood glue around it so that when the wood glue dries, the super glue basically acts as a clamp. But you know, you can kind of spray and get your activator on there, get your piece set, and then throw one of these Collins clamps on there, throw two of them on there for good measure, and that joint is going to set up in a couple of seconds and basically be permanently bonded. So some good fast-acting super glue, really cheap investment, especially if you're a carpenter or a trim guy. Keep this stuff around. Keep it in the truck. Keep it in the tool bag. Hide your crimes with some good thick super glue and an activator, and get yourself a grip of these Collins clamps. Very inexpensive. The tool is like so simple, and I've used this on projects before. You can kind of see the little holes that are left, but really useful to have. Pop on and pop off. And if you don't have the tool, you can kind of get away with doing these by hand as well. But the tool definitely makes it a lot easier. All right, so you've got an overview of some of the inexpensive tools I've got here in the shop that I use all the time. Now, if you watch my videos and there's anything in my videos that you want to learn more about, leave a comment on that video or leave a comment here, and I'm happy to give you more information over on my Instagram at Make Everything Shop. There's going to be links on where you can get all this stuff from the various websites or from Amazon down in the description of this video. And if you have any questions, leave them down below. See you on the next one.